back to my channel. My name is Charlene, and today I'm going to be doing the Epistolary Query Tag. This was created by Anne from In Search of Wonder, mostly for Epistolary January, but I'm a little late getting to it, so I didn't quite make it to January. And then I was tagged by Kelly from Kelly Reads a Lot, so I will have links to both of their channels and their videos down in the description below if you want to go check them out. So the first question is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel about epistolary novels in general? 1 being you hate it, and 5 being you absolutely love it. And I am at a 5. I love epistolary novels. I think they are so much fun to read. And that's kind of a buzzword for me when it comes to novels. If I hear it's epistolary, I want to read it even more. The next question is a follow-up question, and that is, what is it about epistolary novels that you love or hate? Well, I obviously don't hate them. But some of the things that I do like about epistolary novels is that, first of all, they are usually much quicker reads, or at least they feel like they're quicker reads. And often I feel like I get just as much out of the story without a lot of the extra detail as I do from some of the more descriptive books. Do I still enjoy the descriptive books? Yes. But there is something about picking up a book and really getting just the main meat of the story without having to go through a whole bunch of description for a change of pace. And second, I also really like that in epistolary novels, because we tend to get them in letters, emails, journal entries, etc., is that you really get a feel for the character you are following. You really have a much better idea of how they talk, how they think. Often I find reading things from a more personal perspective rather than narrative perspective makes it a lot easier to get through the book and also helps me feel more connected with the characters. Question number 3 is, what is your favorite adaptation of an epistolary novel? Or what epistolary novel would you like to see an adaptation of? And I don't really have an answer for the second part of it, so we're going to go with the first part. And the main one that comes to mind is the BBC adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. The hard part I had with this tag is trying to remember, of the books that I've read, which ones are actually epistolary. Some of them are obvious because the entire book is either written in journals or in letters, but there are some books that I've read that there might be a few letters here and there, or there's some emails thrown in, or things like that. And as far as I understand, they're still considered epistolary, even though the entire book isn't written that way. And so it's hard to remember which ones are epistolary and which ones aren't when it's been, in some cases, many, many years since I read the books. So the BBC adaptation of Pride and Prejudice is the first one that comes to mind. However, considering the way that it's written, I feel like this other book is technically epistolary, and the book doesn't ever specify, but it feels like these would be, like each of the chapters would be a journal entry. If I'm incorrect on that, then you could throw this part of the answer out. But the other one that came to mind is Speak, which stars Kristen Stewart. For as much as people make fun of the way that she portrayed Bella, how much of that is due to her acting and how much of that is due to the directing, I don't know. I feel like that personality type that comes across in Twilight actually works really well for Speak. And I felt like she did a really good job with it, even though I went into the movie not knowing the story. I read the novel later, but I did really enjoy the movie, and I thought she did a really good job with it. So that would be my answer if Speak is technically epistolary. If it is not, then BBC's Pride and Prejudice. And now I have to go let the cat out. Question number 4 is, what literary character do you wish you could correspond with? And my understanding is this could be epistolary or non-epistolary character. And the one I'm going to go with for this one is Mrs. Kipp from The Extraordinary Deaths of Mrs. Kipp. Simply because she has a lot of wisdom that she is 100% willing to pass on. So she's really someone that I could learn from. But also, she very much has a sense of humor that I really appreciate. So I think she is one that would be a lot of fun to correspond with. Plus, there's a lot that I could learn from her. Question number 5 is, who is a character from history that you wish you could peek into their real, unedited, uncensored journals? And for this one, I'm going to go with J.R.R. Tolkien. The more that I learn about him, really him and C.S. Lewis, the more I want to know. We do have a lot of C.S. Lewis's personal writings on his thoughts and ideas, especially when it comes to Christianity, but I don't feel like we have as much when it comes to Tolkien. And again, the more I learn about him, the more I just want to know more about his life, what he did, and what he was thinking with some of the things that he did. So his, I think, would be a lot of fun to read and also very educational to read because he did study a lot of different things, and I think there's a lot that could be learned from that as well. Question number 6 is, what is your favorite literary letter? And I don't really feel like I have an answer for this one because unfortunately, while I may enjoy them while I'm reading them, I don't really have them locked away as this was a really good letter. I want to remember this one. I feel like there should be some letters that come to mind, but I can't remember what they are for the life of me. So the one I'm going to go with is the letter from Mr. Darcy to Elizabeth Bennet, the one that, from what I recall, starts out with, "If you never want to hear from me again, I will not bother you after this." That one I really enjoy, but it's the only one that I can think of for some reason. Question number 7 is, what novel that is not an epistolary novel do you think would work well as one? And I had a hard time coming up with one for this. In a lot of cases, I felt like a historical fiction of some kind would work well for that. But when I went looking through the books that I've read, I couldn't come up with any in particular that I thought would specifically work well as an epistolary novel. So the two that I've come up with are actually middle grade. And the first one is Aggie Morton, and the second one is Myrtle Hardcastle. And yes, these are both the second books in the series because I have the first ones out on loan to somebody else. But I thoroughly enjoyed both of these books. Both of them follow younger characters. I think they're somewhere around 11 and 13, if I remember right. And both of them, the children have this morbid curiosity with death and wanting to solve crimes, wanting to solve murders. And I think if either of these books had been written from the perspective of either Myrtle or Aggie in the form of journal entries or something like that, I think they would have still been a lot of fun, and I think they would have worked well that way. They were not written that way, but I think they could have worked well that way. Question number 8 is, what epistolary novel do you wish you could relive again for the first time? And for that one, I am 100% going to have to go with Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This one is written almost entirely, if not entirely, in journal entries. You start out not really knowing what's going on. You're figuring things out along with the character. Everything feels very bizarre. And it's one of those books where, yes, I could go back and reread it and still enjoy it. But I can't go back to knowing absolutely nothing about this house and the character, why he's there, any of that. And so if I could relive any book for the first time, it would be this one. Because you can't get back that first experience with a book like this. Question number 9 is, if you were a character in an epistolary novel, what would your stationery look like? And I did some looking online just so I could have some images to show you guys. But honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is something astronomy related. And this was one of the ones that I found. It may not look overly like it's related to astronomy, but it kind of is. There's some stars and different things on there. This is extremely fancy looking stationery as well though. So there's a good chance that's not what I would actually have. But I wouldn't mind having stationery like that. More than likely, if I was actually a character in a novel, this is more of what my stationery would look like. It's a lot more simplistic, but it still looks really nice. Question number 9 is, what is the first epistolary novel you can recall reading? I have a couple answers for this one, because I'm not 100% certain this first one counts. The first one that came to mind was Haunted House by Peggy Parish. I read this book when I was in 5th grade, and for the most part, it is not epistolary, but they do receive letters throughout the book from a mysterious person. They don't know who they're from. And the messages are very short, usually 1 or 2 sentences, and then there's a word puzzle that the kids are supposed to solve. If, as short as those notes are, that counts, then this would be the first epistolary novel that I can remember reading. However, again, the notes are extremely short, and it's more about the puzzles than the notes themselves. So, if you don't want to count that one, then the first epistolary novel I can remember reading, which I actually forgot was epistolary, until I was going through this question and trying to remember the first epistolary I might have read, is the Pendragon series by D.J. MacHale. This is the first book called The Merchant of Death. It is marketed as a middle grade series. The main character, though, is between the ages of 14 and 18 throughout the series. YA did not exist at the time when the series was first published, or at least when the books first started coming out. Now, I will say the first 3, 4, 5 books do read more middle grade, but the series does age a bit with the characters, so there is a lot more going on and a lot more to them as you get to the later books. But this series is told in 2 different ways. On one hand, we have Bobby Pendragon, who is a 14-year-old. He plays basketball, he does well in school, and he gets taken by his mysterious Uncle Press to another world, essentially. And while he is traveling around trying to save basically the universe from a villain who calls himself Saint Dane, he writes journals back home to his friends detailing what's happening. And part of it is to historically preserve what has happened, what the travelers have been doing, because that's what people who travel to these worlds are known as, is travelers. Part of it is also, it helps keeps his friends up to date on what's been going on in his life. But then we also get chapters that are told in the third person perspective, where we are following his friends back home and we see what's going on in their lives and on Earth. I really enjoyed this series. It is one of my favorite series. I will say the first 3, 4 books do feel very formulaic after a while, but if you can get past the 4th book, it gets a whole lot stranger and a whole lot less formulaic. This is one I never hear people talking about, but this, unless you count Haunted House, this was the first epistolary novel I can remember reading. And then question number 11 is, what literary character in an epistolary novel or otherwise would you write to for advice? And I feel like I'm stealing other people's answers, but I really can't come up with anybody else. So I'm just going to go with Marmee from Little Women. She really is like the ideal mother. She is the mother we all strive to be. I would love to be able to go to her for advice on being a mother, taking care of a household, and so on. If I did have to choose another character, it would be from the same book, but it would actually be Meg. Mostly because Meg's life actually followed a similar trajectory to mine, in that she primarily became a wife and a mother. Yes, I do like Jo as a character, but Jo's life did not follow a similar path to mine. So I would probably go with Meg, if not Marmee. But let's be honest, we can all learn a lot from Marmee. Then question number 12 is to tag 2 channels. So I don't know who in all has been tagged yet because this tag is fairly new and I don't remember who everyone tagged. So if I'm tagging someone who's already been tagged, I apologize. But I am going to go ahead and tag Jess from Pages and Grace. And I'm also going to tag Mercedes from Beautiful Books. She has a newer channel that I've recently subscribed to, so I'd be very curious to hear her answers. And of course, I always want to hear Jess's answers. But if you do have a YouTube channel and you want to do this tag, you can consider yourself tagged as well. If you don't have a channel, but you would like to answer some of the questions, you can feel free to do so down in the comments below. Other than that, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you later.